Two, one, and we are live. Hello, hello, welcome everybody. This is Paranormal Into the Night, Bigfoot Paranormal Talk Radio. Um, Tonight we have one the great Miss Raven Hawk, a Bigfoot seeker who will very have a very good show tonight that we're having. And Raven Hawk, let's just get into it. I, it's all yours.
It's all mine. Hello, everybody. Um, I'm really shy about doing this. I don't know what to say, but I guess we could just start telling stories. So, none of my story will be in chronicle order because I had to experience a bunch of stuff that I didn't understand what was going on. And then years later, it took me years to understand that, oh my gosh, I really do have Bigfoot in my backyard kind of story. And so we have pictures. You should tell them where our pictures are at. So if they want to look at the pictures, I've already posted them.
Okay, so everybody, please go when you have time to look at Ravenhawk's pictures. They'll be on Into the Night Bigfoot Paranormal Talk Radio Facebook group site. Facebook group site. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I have some fairly good pictures. And so I got a caretaking job at a small homestead, is what they said. It was rustic. They also said it was rustic and in the middle of nowhere, Idaho. And so I'm an adventurer and it sounded good and I landed there. And it was very primitive. Rustic wasn't even the word. It had an outhouse and it had been an old homestead from the Roosevelt time. And it had the cook house. There's always a cookhouse on any ranch. It had the cookhouse and then it had this big long roof of tin, and then the middle room was framed in, and it had two floorboards down with you could see the ground in the middle, and I put a log, over it and a bridge, a drawbridge, a couple alligators down the pit, and then there was another cabin connected by one long roof, and that'll play into the story later, to another cabin, and that was Granny's cabin. And it had been a dairy farm. So next to the house is an ice house. And then if you're facing the south, there were three huge, large trees that so old. Oh my gosh, they were so beautiful. They're red fir trees, and luckily these have not been cut down. And it would take about 5 of us holding hands to go around these trees. So they're right up on my house, these three grandmother trees. And then on the other side of the yard, there's just a short space, like say that's 20 feet. And then there's a hillside with trees growing on it, and then a cutoff where there used to be a railroad right away going right through there. And they would come and stop at this ranch and pick up the milk from the dairy farm and then go down the road. And the railroad was gone and abandoned, and the energy was still there, but it was just like like a tunnel. They leave a tunnel through the mud. And then I had a walk that I would go to back to what I called the spring, and it was all trees. And then on the right side was just a drop off down to the creek, and it was a ravine. And on the other side was a whole different world than my side of the ravine. And I went over there a few times, and it was an old cedar grove, but I never felt comfortable in there. And so I just sort of stayed out. And all through my story, I had this Bigfoot denial. And I believe in little people. I've seen spirits. I have chased demons off of people because of what I do, my spirit job. But I could not wrap my head around a Bigfoot, and I don't know why. It was like, I don't know why. So always it felt weird there when I would go and walk, back to the thing, but you feel comfortable, in your own forest. But I always felt there was something going on that I couldn't see and I didn't never understand. And so one day I'm at home, my neighbor comes by and he goes, "What's that noise in your back meadow?" And I said, "Oh, some dog on the hill, I think. I've been hearing it for a couple weeks." And he looked at me really weird and he said, "Did you go out there and really listen to it?" And I said, "No, I've been too busy." It's like way over yonder. I don't care. It's not my backyard. So he made me come out in the meadow and listen. And I was like, that's really weird. It's not anything I ever heard in my life. Like, I'm a pretty woodsy person. I never heard this sound and it sounded big and deep and kind of weird. And I just, wrote it off. I'm busy. I'm living in an old rustic cabin and I'm taking 16 penny nails and I'm nailing in windows and I'm foaming them with foam because it was that rustic. There were no windows, and I have no electricity, so I'm lighting lanterns and I realized during my time there that there is a sense of security with electricity that if you get spooked in the middle of the night and go turn on a light and my flashlights never work. I'm one of those people that nothing ever works for them. And so basically I'm in pitch dark because we don't have light pollution where I live. There is a few lights over at the bridge and that's it, you know, unless I've got light or the moon's got light. And and I wasn't really afraid a little bit in the beginning, new place. And so I got to thinking about that Bigfoot. I thought there's no such thing. I believed in jackalopes, I believed in unicorns, and they were a lie. But then, it got me thinking, and so he was hollering out in the meadow again a few days later, and I went out there to the end of the meadow and I listened, and I answered the call as best I could. And there was a long pause, and then he called again. And so I answered again, and I had the intention of, "All right, who are you? I'm gonna draw you in by flirting with you, right?" Because you can do that. You can do that with turkeys, you can do that with deer, you can bring the animals in if you kind of just make the right call, and they're out there looking around, and so I was playing, and I'm cocky, and I play with spirits, and I have no sense sometimes. And I did that a few times, and he answered a few times, and then all of a sudden all hell broke loose, and excuse the cuss word, but I have no other word. It sounded like a bunch of elephants were trampling the woods, tree breaks, everything was bending and big ape noises and I don't know what else noises. And I was sitting there and I know my eyes went wide and I'm not one to run, but when you get that first scare of something's real and you get that pit in your stomach, like, oh shit, right? I got that and I was like, oh my gosh. And then I got the feeling of, this is a young male. And I didn't realize when I did that call that I was on my moon time. And I went home, my Lord, what have I done? And I had this vision of him running down out of the woods, throwing me over his shoulder and running back in the woods and having a high old time. And I just, oh no. And so, yeah, I did get spooked that day. I didn't run. I stopped calling back and I walked calmly to my house, went in, closed the door that never did have a lock on it. I never had a lock on that door. Anything could come in. Went in my bed, got in the bed, covered myself up with the covers and just sort of laid there a while. And then I really forget about that, and life goes on, you forget about stuff. Interaction with them is very slow in the beginning in my case. And so then a bunch of us girls went out and had a gathering in Sandpoint, and some locals started telling stories, and they said, "Oh, we had a Bigfoot comes to our sweat lodge." And I was like, "Oh, Bigfoot, right." I don't believe in that. You guys are so funny. And yet I believe in little people in my life, right? As some Bigfoot block, and I don't know why. And they said, oh, yeah. And they were telling me that the Bigfoot like little huts, like their sweat lodge. They take the covers off to air it out between sweat lodges, so you just have a stick frame, a little hut, and that the Bigfoot was very curious of that. And so on my walk to the spring with the wolves, there had been logging and there was a lot of trash here and there, limbs and stuff, and that's annoying. And I'm sorry, my beeper keeps going off here.
Oh, oh, okay.
I should try to turn it off. But how? Okay, and so I was going along and there was a bunch of sticks, and I thought, all right, well, I'm going to make a pyramid with sticks. And I made a big old pyramid with all the sticks on the trail that me and my wolves would walk. And we'd walk that path a lot of times during the days because you have to run wolves. You can't just keep them in a pen or whatever. We have to roam. And so I started making a big old teepee, and then I thought, all right, if there's Bigfoot out here, I'm going to make him a gift. And I got a turkey wishbone, and I painted it with rainbow colors, and then I drilled a hole and I put a golden bell on it for the rainbow and the gold. And I put it with a stick way up high on top of this teepee. And in the inside of the teepee, I put a huge abalone shell. It's like 4 times the size of an ordinary abalone shell. I put a big one there. And I started leaving weird offerings in that. Nobody likes broccoli, I'll tell you. But and I didn't know, and I put that bowl there and there was nothing in it. And then a few days go by and suddenly the wolves and I are going by and there's a huge pine cone in that bowl. And it's one of the long curved ones that come from up higher on the mountain. There's none of those pine cones in this 640 acres of mine that I'm watching, you know? And and the turkey wishbone was gone. And then the only other thing that was ever taken out of that bowl was I rolled up a tobacco and I left it in the abalone shell. And I even weighed it down with a rock and something took that right away. And I didn't know what. And so a lot of time passes, like when you're living with them, it's very slow for me anyway. And maybe it was because I wasn't observant enough. I don't know. And there was always weird things happening, like I smudge a lot. I bring out my wings of various sorts and smudge my house and everything on the planet, right? And there's days you burn that big old stick for the year 23, right? But I use my wings a lot, and suddenly wings started appearing in my yard in weird places, like right in front of my workshop. And I was like, oh no, one of my bird friends has died. But there was just be a wing. And to me, I knew that was a spirit gift, but I didn't know from whom. And I'm very good with that. Like when I get gifted rocks or other medicine things I have, I usually can figure out who or where it came from. And this was a mystery. And I was upset because it was like, that was my favorite bird. Why do you have to put its wing in front of my door?
Uh-oh.
Whoever you are, I don't appreciate that, but I gave him tobacco anyway, and I cured my wing, right? And when I never could understand what was going on, and wings would be over by my garden. And then I started finding like moles and voles and dead little birds on the track that me and the wolves would go. And I was like, that's horrible. Who is doing that to me? Like, this is a curse to me. When I go walk in my woods, I don't want to see death in my trail.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, what is wrong with these forests? And so I have a really good friend, and Jason Hawk. I stole the Hawk name.
Mm.
Jason Hawk's on the mountain then, and he's a great knife. maker and artist, and I am of their family, whether they liked it or not, and I stole the hawk name, and I hope I live up to the artist name one day. But he says, "Well, I don't understand what's going on there either." He's like, "Watch around a little more." And so it was weird. One day I found a bit of fur in my trail, and it was shaped like a bird.
Okay.
And I thought that is so weird. Like, what is that? And so, but I saved it because, I'm more like that. My whole house is filled with weird stuff from outside that I consider a gift or a blessing or whatever, a message. And that's my life. And so I saved it. And then the next couple of days, I tripped over a piece of deer hide that was in a perfect shape of a heart.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Well, that's weird. And here's tobacco. And thank you for the heart. But who are you? And where are you? And how do we sit down and have a meditation?" Nothing. I get nothing. And so I tell him again. And what he said to me to do and what I actually did were two different things. Jason says, "Well, they like hair and fur. So shave your legs and shave under your arms and take the hair out of your brush and make them a caterpillar and put it in your garden."
Mm.
But what I heard was, I don't really do a whole lot of shaving anywhere unless I absolutely have to. I'm French. I could care less.
Right.
I'm not that hairy.
Mm.
I'm cool. I'm a French lady. I'm nice. And I took my hairbrush hair and I formed a nest. And then I made a little bird like they did out of my hair, with spit and everything, and rolling it and shaping it and making it dry as a sacred gift with Beeb. And I say this because your spit is your DNA.
Mhm.
And that is the best offering you can offer back to nature. Is you don't have to go bald by offering your hair. You can offer your spit. And it's not disrespectful. That's your DNA.
Right. Right.
That's a sacred offering. So I always put my spit into things because I took so much from nature. I thought I'd go bald if I gave my hair. But that turned out to be correct, right?
Right.
And so, well, I left that out there, and nothing happens for a long time. And then, what was next? Oh, okay.
Take your
And
time.
then well, I'm thinking, and then it hit me, and that's going to be the title of my book because oh no, wait, I got one other thing. That's right. Okay. So then, time passes and you don't know what's going on. You're in a daydream because you're living in paradise with your wolves and you're happy. And running like wolves is nothing better for a woman than to be that free and to just run with wolves. Like it is so beautiful. My spirit was very high and happy there. And one night, now I still don't have electricity. I went 5 years with no electricity. And as I said, it's a security. But I super loved using lanterns. There was no noise from electricity. And I'm noise sensitive because I have Asperger's. And it was so quiet. So I liked it. And I had computer by battery that I charged up. And so I loved the silence. And to add to the spooky, here is this woman they call witch living in a spooky old cabin and had a pet bat. His name was Lurch. And he scared me the first night. He was flying around that bedroom in that little tiny first part of the cabin I was telling you about. I lived in the first part in the beginning. And I didn't know what it was. And I shone my light and it was a bat. And it was just a tiny little fruit bat. But I was like, holy, what is that? A bat. And then you think of vampires. And then, so I would cover my neck and sleep at night. I thought this little tiny fruit bat was gonna like suck my blood or something. And then he would started getting bolder and he would come out and I would literally have to let my bat out the door
Mm.
in the evening. And then he would mysteriously end up back in the house in my bedroom in the morning. And so Another noise at night was one night I'm laying in my bed and there's a door right there where I can open the door and still be in my bed. And I smelt something funny, and there'd been this hole in down into the root cellar under the house, and I never knew why or what. I knew something lived in that hole at some time, but I didn't know what. And I smelt something funny one night and opened the door and looked, and it was a wolverine.
Mm.
And we're like 5 feet from each other. And I'm like, oh my gosh, to me, this is like, wow, nature. And its eyes were yellow and they have this look like, bring it on.
Mhm.
Like Wolverines are so mean.
Mhm.
They don't care. They just stand and look at you like, bring it on. And
Mhm.
I just told him, peace and whatever. And that was who lived in my basement. So I had a bat and a Wolverine and two wolves. And eventually the wolves chased the Wolverine out, but we got to look at each other a lot. And and so I have to tell you something here. Noise. Noise in the background. Your noise in the background. You're beeping.
Oh, that's no. All mine's silent. Everything's silent.
Oh, something. I heard some beeping. I got mistracked.
Mhm. Yeah, I made sure everything was off mute.
So him. Okay. So one night I was sitting there. I'm sorry. It's an Asperger's thing. Like beeping noises of computers make your brain go. "Bleep."
Hmm.
And
Understood.
yeah. Okay. So one night I'm sitting there by lantern and I don't have a TV. I've really never had a TV. No radio, of course. I'm just sitting there, hanging out, and all of a sudden there started these screams, and it was so loud and so deep that the whole cabin just suddenly started shaking. And I had taken and finished the walls in that middle room and put in a room with insulation and put in my own windows, and there was French door,
Mm.
and connected it to the back cabin, and I had one roof. And I'm sitting in that middle room by the window I put in, and I put that one in nice. I had figured out you don't use 16 penny nails and foam to put your window in. It's not pretty. I put that window in nice and fit it tight and carpenter away, and everything was shaking with these screams and howls, and I was like, what the heck? And then I sat there for a minute, and then I had a bunch of guns my neighbors brought me because that's Idaho. Everybody brings you guns, says, "Here's for your protection," and then you're like, and I'm good with guns. I actually am a deadeye, but I'm looking at all these guns, thinking, "What kind of gun do you use for that noise?" And then I thought, no, and it was so weird because it shook my insides. Like they were not. I wish I had a recording. Everybody in the Bigfoot world would be going, "Oh my gosh," because they were right up on me. They were, remember I told you the layout of the land had that little short yard, and then it came up with that little hill that cut down into the railroad right away. So they were in that little space with me where the sound reverberates off that hill into my house. They were within 10 feet of me,
Mm. Oh,
maybe
good.
15 feet. And I finally figured out later, it was a bunch of males, and they had used that house as a clubhouse.
Mm.
You know how the males do, and it had been vacant before I moved in for a long time. That had been their clubhouse for when they seem to have like these gatherings, or a bunch of clans will come in a small space and they all have a party. And
Mm.
the young males are all hot and horny, and they're running around and their testosterone's up, and I think
Mm.
they picked their mates because it's springtime, you
Mm.
know? And so it had been their clubhouse, and they had come to party at the clubhouse, and suddenly there was someone there. And so I didn't know what to do, and I'm not one to run. And I decided, well, this is my territory. So I went in the kitchen and I got a metal bowl and I got a wooden spoon, typical woman style. And I opened my door and I opened the screen door and I walked between the ice house and the house, and I walked right out into the middle of them, and I know they were all around me. and they just froze. And I put that up like a bell, and I pinged my bell, and I said, "Take your effing party somewhere else." Silence, total silence. And I stood there with them, and I felt them around me. I did not know what it was. I am still refusing to admit that Bigfoot lives in my backyard. And I don't know why. I really don't know why. But I knew something big was all around me, and I am trained as an exorcist, and so I know how to stand my ground. And they didn't feel evil. For those that, oh, they're evil and all that, no. It was this big, and I stood my ground, and I felt big energy around me. And I also kind of felt like when I was raising the boys, I felt like it was a bunch of kids. It was a bunch of young males out being rambunctious, same way our males, children are out being rambunctious, right? Granny brings them in, Mama says no. And that happened 2 times, 2 different years. And I started getting curious, and I finally found that up here they will put an arrow with just 2 sticks. It'll point to the forest, there'll be a hole, and there'll start to be X's going back of different sizes, and it'll make a trail, and you'll come to a spot where there is nothing. There's no pine cone, there's no stick, there are no pine needles. And they have literally swept out a huge ceremony area, and they have a clan gathering. As to what they do, I have, my theories. I think they go and get mates from other, and by clan, I think family units, you know, they go and, find mates. I think they know how to mate, and they have a party and they hang out. And so that's what they were doing when they were at my clubhouse. That's my theory, anyway. And then, so,
Very interesting.
okay, because I ignore, oh no, wait, that's something else. Wait a minute, I have a better idea. Okay, okay, and then another thing I think was going on was I built gardens, and I went and got pallets, and I went and gathered all those sticks, and then I bought teepee poles from Native American teepee place in Creston, and I'm sorry, but they ripped me off, and my teepee poles were crooked, and I couldn't use them for my teepee, so I stuck them in my garden.
Okay.
And there'll be a picture of my gardens, and I stuck sticks everywhere, and hung CDs and soap and chanted, and to keep the deer out of the garden, right? And so I did all this stuff, and what I finally realized was that caught the attention of all the kids. And then because I never chased them around for years and stuff, I think a level of trust started happening without me knowing they were there. And their kids were allowed to come watch me in my garden. They put boards up in the trees and would climb up there. They would hide behind the solar panels.
Mm.
They would hide in the bushes, and I started feeling them finally. I was like, oh my gosh, all the kids are here. And the kids and I started communicating. And they are what I learned the most from. And some groups will they start making fun of you, children. Well, let me tell you what, those children were absolutely delightful. And when they start trusting, and you have to have a level of trust for them to let the children come around you,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I think I was the babysitter because I'm out in the garden all day. Hey, kids, go watch the stick lady. Because I wonder if they
Mm-hmm.
call me the stick lady. I got sticks every which way but loose, and I
Mm-hmm.
use them for everything. Go watch the stick lady, and we'll be back later. We're going down yon hill to talk to the adults or something. But the kids started hanging around, and I started feeling their energy.
Okay.
And then I had an experience that made me have to realize that Bigfoot was real. And I'm not going to tell that story tonight. It's another story, but I saw one on the road. It was white. It was
Mm.
huge. and that's a whole nother story. It's like a whole adventure with just that one. And so I finally started telling myself, this is real, and I don't know why you keep trying to avoid it, but you are actually living with Bigfoot in your backyard.
Mm.
So I started studying everybody's videos, and I realized that from the very beginning when I landed there, the one that I bonded with, the one that yelled at me, that I yelled back, we bonded, and I call him Tahaji, and that's the only one I have a name for. We bonded, and he had made me this structure, and I don't have a picture of it. It's in my Seagate, and I can't get it out, but he had taken an old Douglas fir, and a Douglas fir has a tendency to bend like an arch. And
Okay.
he took a Douglas fir that didn't belong in this area and had put it at the beginning of that trail I keep talking about. And there were three logs underneath, and then he had put this arch up over and balanced it on those three logs.
Mm.
And to me, in my magical realm, I never noticed. I mean, I knew it had appeared there, but in my magical realm, I just thought, oh, right, a portal. I'm
Mm.
going in, and I never thought of who put it there.
Mm.
And and later I realized that he built me a portal into their magical realm, right?
Mm.
And it was funny because I could walk under it and not have to duck, and anybody any taller than me, even by a little bit, had to duck.
Okay.
Like it was exact, and I didn't notice that until years later, and I got and stood under it, and I thought, well, I'll be danged. When you step on these two boards, you're exactly my height, and this portal was built for me, wasn't it?
Mm.
And so he had built me other things in the woods, but I didn't realize it at the time because I didn't understand what they do, you know? And he built a bunch of structures, and that was his way of courting. I really believe that was how they court. In a
Mm.
way, is, hey, lady, look at what I can build for you. And I didn't notice it, and he got frustrated with me a few times and stuff, like, I wasn't understanding.
Mhm.
We were still flirting. I had answered his mating call, and he thought we were still flirting, and it's been so much time, I forgot about that.
Mhm.
It was sort of like that. But so and then the living room, there's a bunch of small stick structures, and that was I call the living room. The kids were left there again, I think, under my care. It
Mhm.
was kind of a spot, and every now and then you'd hear, "We've gone hunting," and the kids would be down in this living room. This is down in the bottom of the ravine, and my house is up to the right, up on top, out of the ravine. And the kids would take sticks and make all kinds of little structures, and they had just all this stuff going on under there. Like, you could tell they spent a lot of hours playing, you know how our children
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
It was like that, and I had noticed that, and I would go down there very respectful, and they had nettles growing down there. They had skunk cabbage, and they were eating it. They eat skunk cabbage in the spring,
Mm.
and they eat the nettles, but they are very selective when they gather their herbs. They leave hardly any trace that they've gathered them. But I gather herbs too, and I started finding traces of, oh, look, they gathered that. And then they also gather Oregon grape, which is a root, and it's like an antibiotic. It's like cure-all, and you gather the whole thing, the root, the leaves, the flowers, and it's antibiotic, and they gather that. And so I'd gone down in the living room, and it was against my routine. And I had gone down there, and oh, wait, back up. I was walking down that path and then gathering roots. My cat's crying. He's either crying or singing. I don't know. That cat's so crazy. He's a Bengal. Can you hear him?
Mhm. That's your pet cat.
Yeah, he's 30-pound cat.
Mhm. Oh my
He's a
goodness.
big old thing. He's a silver Bengal. And
Mhm.
so it was root gathering time, and I was out gathering roots, and now I'm more observant. Okay, I know Bigfoot's in my yard. I'm doing my same routine, but I don't bother them.
Mhm.
And I look over and there's one gathering roots. And she looks over at me and I swear smiles. It was like she had been gathering roots next to me probably for a long time, and I was not paying attention to my surroundings and I didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm.
and so I asked her if I could have a picture. I had my camera that day, and she actually stepped out a little, gave me a picture, and then poof, gone,
Mm. Oh,
like they
nice.
do. And I thanked her. And when I asked permission, I say that I would use it one day for educational purposes, and so that's how I try to do that. Um, so she had tools that she gathered the roots with, and I had gone down to the living room that day and gone over to the nest. There was a nest down there. It was on the other side of the creek. And I had started stating out loud to them at this point that I live on this side of the ravine and you live on that side of the ravine. And I respect you and I'm not going to cross over and try to explore over there anymore. If you want me to come to your side of the ravine, then you can ask me.
Mm.
And I would offer tobacco, and then with no camera, I would sit and watch this nest. There was a nest. And they were used to the creek having a runoff, and they had taken 4 boulders and put them side by side like a foundation. And then above that, they had filled in the dirt and the needles and stuff, and then they had taken the trees and woven them over to make a hut
Mm.
and woven the trees in. And you can take a picture of something like that, but it doesn't do it justice, you know? But they had woven themselves into I call them birthing huts. They sit in there and they nurse their children, and that's where, you know, you go to be safe with the children. You know, you've got this little hut and you're comfortable and you're kind of shaded over and nobody should be bothering you. And I would ask permission. I knew where 2 of those were. One was in a tree and one was on that creek, and they didn't seem to mind I was there, and they let me have one baby picture, which I didn't include in the pictures. But they let me have one baby picture, and even the babies know to stand up, turn sideways, and be still.
Oh, goodness.
And they're only a foot and a half tall, like, you know, like they're just this little thing. They pose just like the adults, like already just really tiny. And I never try to take any other pictures. I ask for what I take, and I would rather sit there and turn my back to them and, you know, do my own thing and just sit with the mamas and hang out with energy instead of try to get a picture, you
Mhm.
know? So I did that in both places and they were special. And then there's other glyphs in the pictures that I show. Oh, okay, there it is. There is a stone and antler, and then there's a bone on a log, and that stone and that antler, as I was coming out of the living room that day, were laying in the trail. And I came up the same trail I came down. They were just laying there. And I was like, oh my gosh, did they leave a gift? And so I picked them up and I brought them out to this log where I put all the gifts that I thought, or, you know, if I found your object, here it is, I put it on the log. And everybody in the Bigfoot community kept saying, that's a gift, that's a gift. And now, as I think back, you know, you have hindsight trying to figure out what happened. I think what happened was she wasn't used to me going down that trail, and she had come to go home, and I started to learn she dropped her rooting tools. She dropped her stone and she dropped her antler, and I left them there for a long time, and I finally kept them as a gift. But in return, I took back a obsidian knife that was their size, you know, and just a chunk, not anything nice, but it was sharp.
Oh, nice.
And I took my antler that would fit their hand because I use the same tools, and I took that and gifted it down in the living room. But that was at the time when I had to leave, and so I never know if she came and got her gift or not. But I carry these 2 items in the forest when I go because I think it's a marker. I think people know they know who I am because of the gifts I carry. and I didn't mean to steal her gifts. I feel bad now because it might have just been I startled her and she dropped it. But and the thing on the right is the bone. I tried to trade for that bone to no success, and that too is another story. And then, okay, so I had to really realize that they were there and that this is real. And I thought, well, I have a stick marking too. Let me show you my glyph. And I got out there and I found a big old tall log that's a Y stick. And that's my glyph. I've always put a Y stick in the fire. I leave them in the forest ever since I was little because I want to know why we're in this realm. It makes no sense to me.
Mhm.
And I've asked that ever since I was a little kid. Why? I don't get this realm. What is this? Why? It's my Y stick. I want to know why. So I got this big Y stick. It was probably 14 feet tall, and I'm 5'5". So, and it was pretty big around. It's probably 6 inches around. I hunted a long time to find the right one. And I put it on the edge of the ravine on the trail, and I got rocks. I stacked them up, and I got sticks, and I propped and pushed and pulled and stood my stick up and looked over the ravine and went, woo,
Mhm.
and did my raven call, and the stick fell over.
Uh-oh.
So I did this like all day. I sat out there trying to make, like they do, out of nothing, make it look magical, stand something up and make it happen, and nothing would work.
Mhm.
And I was patient and I prayed with it and I tried and I'm marking my territory, dang it. Didn't work. And I finally just got mad at that stick and that cage and came out and I thought, yeah, F you over the cliff. I'm not doing it anymore. And I forgot about that.
Mhm.
So then on the trail, oh no, that a few days later, I went out and I spread out my mesa cloth and I got my big Yeti skull and I got my pipe and my tobacco and my smudge and a doobie and some, just your things. You sit around for a while and I loaded my pipe and I smoked it with prayers that I said out loud. And I recognized to them that they were a people and that they were there. And there was no more denying what was in my backyard. And then I asked him for a picture, and I took two pictures that day. And one of them is the one you see Tahaji, and I lighten his eyes. He's in that picture. And the other ones in the picture I never have felt I should share, so they're secret still. But he showed me his whole family, and this is the same one that flirted with me, and it had been years had gone by since the flirting. I think about 10 years had gone by. He was grown, he was an adult, he was the alpha of his clan by now, and he showed me in the picture that he had two mates and babies, and you can see one mate standing there like we do with a baby on her hip.
Mhm.
And then you can see another one with a baby and two babies going up a tree. And so I think he was showing me that he had two mates now. And and I was like, thank you for the picture, and I just show part of it and the other part I keep to me because I thought it was really special. And so then one day I thought, okay, I'm going to go down here and do like all the Bigfooters and I'm going to drum, make a ruckus, I'm going to film.
Mhm.
You know how you do, right? We're going to get out and do this. So I go down there and I drummed and loaded my pipe and stuff, and I don't film any of that. And my songs are horrible. I just remember a few Indian songs, and other than that, you get nursery rhymes and a drum because I don't know how to sing. So, but I went down there and I was doing that, and I I heard a thump that day, and the whole ground shook, and I knew something had crossed the creek, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh. Because other than that, even though you can feel energy, you just don't know they're there all the time. Like, but I heard that thump and I was like, whoa, we've got attention now.
Uh-oh.
And so I kept on with my thing, and then I sat and had a cigarette and I talk out loud, but I'm at a creek and I don't know. I have a soft voice. I don't know if anybody can hear me, but I talk anyway. And I had been playing my drum and then I looked up, and I don't know how they do this, but Through the trees, all I could see was a face, and it was huge. It was a foot and a half, 2 foot tall, and that's what I mean, 2 foot wide without the fur. Like it was this leather face of a human being, and then you get down to the mouth, and it's not quite a human being, and then you're thinking it's shadows, and then it's looking at me. And I'm kind of nearsighted, but I can always see animals. Like, I don't know, daddy teaches you that. Like, you get eagle eye when it's something alive. So I'm sitting there looking at it and smoking my tobacco, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm looking at somebody. And then I felt it was him. I felt it was Tahaji, and then I thought, I'm imagining this. And then he cocked his head and looked at me funny, and I thought, my spider drum. He wants to see what's on my drum, and the spider's not a usual medicine, but grandmother spider gave me her medicine. She submits herself. That's why her legs are laid back. She submits her poison to me, and we can turn poison into healing. And then there's multiple spiders there because I've been bit by the black widow too, and I have
Oh no.
lightning. And my drum, you can see lightning when I drum. It's a lightning drum, and I turned it around and showed it to him, and then I drummed it, and he can see that lightning moving on the drum because it's like an optical illusion, the lightning moves. And he kept cocking his head, and that was when I knew I was really looking at a being. And all I can remember though is his eyes, like they were a little bit shadowy, but you could still see him. And when we looked eye to eye, I thought this being is more human than I am, and I can't explain that, like,
Mm,
to you. Like, their heart is so much bigger than ours and so much more open, and I couldn't explain it.
mm,
And we looked at each other for a bit, and then I drummed some more, and then I was getting kind of nervous by then because I felt them all around me, and I've got video of at least 30 of them around me, but I was nervous.
mm,
And you're a little nervous, but I try not to be. I try to be balanced when I'm in the
mm,
nature. So time to get up, let's act like we're a bigfooter and film. So I filmed on my way out, and I told him before I turned on the camera, and I got one glimpse of the shaman. And the I felt that was the one that jumped the creek. By her position, it
mm,
had to be her. And I went back and got in the spot, and right there was a dip in the land. And if I stood there and the branches above that she's looking over, she's over 9 feet tall. And she wears it looks like a dog skin to me, and it doesn't look
mm,
coyote.
mm,
And the pictures in the pictures I left, and she paints it feels like a she it thing, and it doesn't feel Bigfoot, and its face is really round, and it looks like it paints its face white. And then that black spot over its eye, I don't know what that is. But on its head, I know is a dog skin. Or there are these beings up here, and they're about 5 foot or less, and they look like a German Shepherd being, and they carry sticks that are sharpened. And I've got them in film, but I can't like pop that out of there and show anybody. You know how you can go and look at it for yourself, but then, to show it is a little bit harder. And I try to put out good pictures. So, and they crouch down and they have sticks, and it almost looks like one of them. And I started calling that one the shaman. And that day that I was drumming, it got mad. That
mm,
one did. It was upset. It didn't like I was getting all the attention.
mm,
And I could feel that. I feel energy. And I left little gifts, and I used to stack the rocks, and I would leave a few nuts and stuff. And every time I would come back down there after I drummed that day, everything was knocked over, and you could feel this energy like, I am the shaman, you're not.
mm, mm,
And I knew what it was, right? And I would go there, and I sat there and I called for it again. I was like, come talk to me. I was like, guess what? I have two drums, and I will give you a drum, you know. we are of the same kind of thing, and I even left a drum there for many nights, but then it was gonna rain, and I was like, "You know, if you're not gonna take your drum, I'm taking it back," and I did. But that being, I don't know what it was. I really don't think that it was fully a Bigfoot, and it was a very jealous, upset being, of course, I guess, to be the shaman, I don't know. You know, that's my speculation, but that was just the feelings I got, and it was always unhappy of everything of me after I drummed. But it never meant any, I mean, you know, it never did any harm or anything. I just kind of irked it, you know, and ceded its place. And okay, so I got the people that owned the homestead died, both of them within a short time. You know, they'd been married all their life. They were childhood sweethearts, and they used to go from this ranch, and the mister would go and pick up his wife to be on horseback in high school, and they would go to school together. And so this ranch was a great family heritage, and that was why I was caretaking. And they both died, and as soon as they did, the son said, "Be out by Snowfly." He always hated I was living there, although he didn't want to live there. And so I had to rush to get out, and there was a whole bunch of stuff happened during that time, but I'm packing and I'm hurrying and I'm trying to finish bonding with Bigfoot because I know I gotta leave him now. And this is one of the things that happened. I came around the corner on the trail one day, and Mikey has died, one of my wolves, and Jester was very old, and I had to keep him on a leash because he was wobbly. And we came around the corner, and I thought that tree's not supposed to be hanging there. And then I had to look at it because I'm real close to it because I'm on that trail, and so I'm looking up and I can't really see the whole thing, only the parts of the pictures I show, and I see roots in the top of the tree, and I see something hanging. And I had to back way down the hill. And so what I had to do was take Jester home and then come back, go way down the hill. And they had built me my own Y stick on my side of the ravine. I was so tickled. I stood there and laughed for hours. They had taken, and I don't know how they did this. I went up on top around on the other side and got a better look at it. I have no idea. They took all these trees and manipulated them and gave me my own Y stick on my side of the ravine. And that was my going away present. And it was humongous. That I can't even explain how big that is. We have big trees here, and I had to go down like into the ravine to get a picture of the whole thing. And so they hung me my own Y stick, and that was super magical. And then in the creek behind me, like if I'm looking at that Y stick in the creek behind me, they took a tree that grew in the creek that I have pictures of. It had branches and stuff, and it had an owl nest in there. And they broke these huge branches off and made it a Y tree. And they marked it right in the middle of the ravine. So from my side of the creek to the middle of the ravine, they let, and I couldn't find that picture. I do have it, but I couldn't find it. They marked the territory of the Y territory. That's my territory. And that was their last gift as I had to leave.
Okay.
And so we have one more story. And this is also to help people like learn to read their messages. And this is just a small little bit I learned. So when I was drumming, I noticed another clan or another bunch or whatever would come from another direction. And I started realizing they weren't the same clan or family as the Ravine clan. And so I walked around and went over into the area and did my thing of tobacco and talk. And I asked them, "Who are you? Where do you
Mhm.
live?" And I came the next day, and this was right in the trail, and I had not been there the day before. And there's a curved stick, there's a pine cone at the top of the stick. Then there's two sticks that were actually the exact same size and almost the same diameter, and then there's a Y fork. Not a Y stick like my clip, but a fork.
Okay.
And I was standing there looking at that, and I knew it was a message, and I thought, "Now I know this is a message."
Mm-hmm.
And I looked, and then I realized that that curvy stick is the exact shape of where I'm standing. If I turn around, walk 3 steps, there's a little hill, and then it shows the pine cone. Go to the top of the little hill, and then it was a power line, and there were power poles, and it says, "Go down 2 poles, and then look for the Y in the path." And so I did that, and I had my camera that day, but I got to the end of it, and they were waiting there, and I didn't try to take a picture, and that's where the sketch that I have, I should put George in there. I have one sketch that I did that actually turned out really good, and that was George. I called them all George because they all kind of looked the same. The bottom of their faces were a little puffy, and I thought they were a snouted clan or something, but I think it was just a bunch of young males. And that their faces at different ages, like might poof out like an ape and then get longer, or whatever change. But and that was where they were.
Okay. Wow.
Um, so yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I figured out a few things about their messages is that they're like little children and they imitate what they see. So if you see an intricate glyph or something, stop and look around you and think like a kid, and they might be pointing you to something that they want you to see,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did forget one thing.
Okay.
One other thing, and this is typical Heyoka. When I went out there that one day and the bird nest was gone. Little bird is back in that spot, that thing I made a hair. And I'm standing there and a bird nest hit me in the head. And
Oh my goodness.
there was no near trees.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there ain't no way. There is no wind. And it was sort of like, and then it hit me. When that nest hit me, and I thought, whatever little thing is playing with me took that nest, and they've just been hitting the head by a nest. What are you?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up and I swear I heard giggling, and that was when I really realized that the Bigfoot were real, and I was playing with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And they hit me in the head with the nest to let me know, wake up, you dummy, we've been here all along, right?
You got the nest.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess about all I can jabber for at one time right there.
That's good. That's
And
very interesting.
it really was, and it took me a long time to actually admit what was going on, and I had to backtrack a lot because, I don't know why we do that. Is that fear or is that just, denial? I don't know.
I think it's fear and denial. I think it's both sometimes.
Both. Yeah. And well, and if you're a woman alone in the woods and no electricity and big creatures running around, you try to be very brave and act like nothing ever scares you, which isn't fully true, but you try to pick on that persona, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. How long have you lived back there?
I lived there 12 years all total, and I fully understood what was going on the last 2 years. And before that, it was just all a jumble, and I didn't really fully understand. And it takes you a while, and then I realized once I connected everybody else's experiences as to what they do and what all the signs were around my house. I connected, what they were doing to me. Like they were trying to give me food. And the last thing they gave me before I left was my favorite grouse that used to go off every morning, and they put him by my truck, and I cried.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I would have loved that if I could have had the fresh kill.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would
Yep.
have eaten that. If you would have brought that to me where I could have, done that. I've eaten grouse. I would have cooked that and eaten it, but they let it sit all night.
Oh no!
Yeah.
And what you said? Frog?
No, a
Oh,
grouse.
grouse.
A grouse, yeah, a grouse, a bird. Grouse.
Okay.
Have you ever eaten
Mm-hmm.
grouse like pheasant?
Oh, not grouse, but I've had other like turkey and stuff. But that's
Yeah,
okay.
like pheasant. Yeah, grouse, actually, they're a very good game animal, but this was like my friend grouse. And I was like, please
Hmm.
quit killing all the animals to feed me, but they never understood that part,
Hmm.
They
Yeah.
were trying to be, they were trying to show friendship, and give me food. And I never really fed them. I put out stuff every now and then, and always I leave something from my garden out in nature, but I didn't try to feed them,
Okay.
you know.
Well, that's
Yeah.
right. That's good. So, do you feel that they have I guess they have a trust. You all have a mutual trust between each other now. They,
Well, we would have. They're gone now. They logged the whole place up and the sun subdivided it and the whole ranch is gone.
okay. Okay.
And that was why I had to be out by snowfly. Everything's gone. I don't know where they went. And I could feel that everything, worked out, but they had been in that ravine for hundreds of years. I mean, literally, they've been there a long time, just formed the trees their way and old cedar trees, and
Hmm.
well, so I feel like they have done whatever it is they do, like they adjusted, but it was a shame to see all that cut down without care.
Hmm.
It was the whole place was a park and it was old trees, old tamaracks and old cedars and they used to selectively just log here and there and leave the old and then he went in and just massacred it all and then died of a heart attack. Go figure, right?
Oh no! Oh my goodness!
Oh yeah, go figure. Mom and daddy got mad and struck you down.
Oh my goodness!
He did, literally. It all happened within a year. He logged it off, subdivided, threw me out, died of a heart attack. Bam,
Mm.
boom, gone.
Oh,
Daddy didn't want that for that place. He wanted it to be kept as a park, and he was so proud to hand that down to his children, 640 acres,
oh my goodness!
Yeah.
So, how, how did you like? Does the place now where you're at does it have electricity, running water, and everything?
I live in a tree house now. I have electricity. I have a flushing toilet. You would not believe after 12 years without one how much that is fascinating. Like, oh my God, yes.
Oh
And
yes.
yeah, I mean, really have a flushing toilet here.
Oh no, I'm
Flush,
with you. I
flushes
totally
all the
agree.
way down into the basement, right?
Hmm. Some people don't know. I believe I've been there before. No flushing toilet. I know.
Well, I lived on the land for probably 5 years in a tent or in my van,
Okay.
and I traveled a lot. And so, yeah, flushing water is a novelty. And
Oh,
my tree house is just an upper story, and there's trees on three sides where my three windows are, so I feel like I'm in the trees because
mhm.
that's my view.
Okay.
Yeah. The Bigfoot here are about 100 yards or less in back of me, but it's Canada, and it's a fine for me to go back in there. So I went back a few times. I got the best pictures I ever had of any Bigfoot everywhere. Back there, they're friendly. They're just like Canadians. They walk right up to you practically and say, "Hey, what you doing?"
Oh my goodness.
But it's illegal for me to go back in there, and it's so weird because they stop at the tree line too. And I don't know, there's cameras, I know there's cameras in my backyard. We're watched all over up here. I could throw a rock at customs. And
Mm.
so in above the cameras, they manipulated the trees too. And where there wasn't a branch to try to grow to another tree, or try to weave together, they bring in a log and they set it up in the crotch of two trees and then they run along that. And
Mm.
they have a whole network up there, but it's so thick and full of over the foliage that I can't get a full picture of it. But I've seen them run, and they have a walkway above the trees
Mm.
with, and they can go way back in there, and I can't get up on that walkway, or else I go back and visit them
Hmm.
and avoid the cops and the cameras, right? Because I'd crawl
Right.
along those logs. I'm not afraid to climb a tree. But I can't get up into them because 'cause they're, straight up and down trees.
Mhm. That sounds. Oh man, that sounds so cool. And then, like you say,
Yeah,
so how do you get up like with the house, the tree house? How do you get up to your home, the house?
I have a ramp.
Okay.
No
Okay.
stairs, thankfully, and I've had bear come up that ramp, and so I have booby traps. I have raccoons and bears and skunks and stuff, and so I feed everybody, but everybody had to learn their limits. So I put out booby traps, and the bear got in his booby trap one night.
Uh
He came up the ramp and was poking around where he didn't belong, and then I heard him huffing. I don't know how a bear goes. Everybody should know. They kind
oh.
of breathe where you hear them. I knew it was a bear, and so I kind of banged a little, and then he got spooked and he started to run back down that ramp. And I had this big old gourd that's like 3 times the size of a basketball, and I had it sitting there on a thing. And then this is an unintentional booby trap. And he was so wide and the gourd was so big that when he panicked and went down, he hit that gourd, and the gourd rolled
Mhm.
down the ramp behind him, and it scared him even more. And
Oh
so
my
I
goodness.
had a gourd roll all the way down one-story ramp, chase the bear out.
Oh
When he
my.
went around the corner, he hit my shovels and my rakes and everything, and he got tangled in that.
Oh
And the
man.
rake was like nearly in the yard, and the shovel was over here, and he never came back again. The bear never came up the ramp again.
Oh
And
my goodness. I guess he learned a hard lesson there.
yeah, I don't know if it was a grizzly or a black bear. I think it was a black bear because, yeah, I never seen really a grizzly like right up on me. They go up and down the roads, but I never seen him come in this little area yet. Really?
Do you have a community? Is there anybody around you that lives around you?
Do I have what?
Like a community of people. Does anybody live around you?
Unfortunately, yes. And they're just noisy. They put in a rock quarry right by me and they bang and my whole house shakes. And
Oh no.
I live at a dead end of 3 roads and it's the busiest place in all of the community all
Oh
of
my.
a sudden. And the land that I tell you that I'm not supposed to go in, they call it no man's land.
Mhm.
I live literally 100 yards from no man's land, and it's the noisiest dang place on the planet.
Oh my goodness.
Like, you can't get away from them.
Mhm.
So,
Oh
yeah.
my goodness. Do you do you feel that like do you, when you go over now you haven't gone over yet to the Canada to visit the Sasquatch in Canada yet, have you?
Yeah, I have pictures, but I'm not gonna admit I went back in there, but yeah,
Okay.
they pose for pictures, I have them, that was where I met the one that comes and looks at me. The ravens came, there's 3 ravens, it's really weird. They use birds in a strange way, and, there were 3 ravens, and they would never let me see them. They would always holler at me, and then I holler back because 'cause I'm a raven, I have a raven call, and we play back and forth, but they would never let me see them. And one day they flew out and they were hollering, and one of them has, which I'll try to find the picture and put it with these. He has a white hand on its wing. It
Mm,
looks like a hand on its wing. And that one flew over, and I thought, I grabbed my camera and I just acted like I'm ignorant and walked back into that forest. And I started taking pictures and looking and exploring. And I followed those ravens way back farther than I should have. And I got to one point and I thought, I am totally surrounded right now by something that I have no idea who they are.
uh-oh.
And so I just kept filming and talking and calling with the ravens. And they let me have a picture of them in the tree, and they're all piled up like the totem pole, but they're adults. And one of them is leaning back, and the way they're posing, they look like another creature. But if you zoom in to the picture, you'll see the one leaning back on something else, and he's got an owl feather over his forehead. And you could see fingers of 2 beings coming around and grasping the tree. So I know there's 2 of them. They're posing.
Okay.
They're posing for intimidation to you. And there's other beings all around, and in part of the film, it looked like one pulled back the bushes and he looked at me and he flips me off literally,
Oh
and
my
he
goodness.
pulls the bushes back and he goes back in, but I can't quite like get it cut out right where everybody can see. And then
Hmm.
I lost interest, in cutting it out anymore. I saw it. It looked like he was really mad I was back in there. And I just started talking, as you do if you're Bigfooting and you think you're scared or nervous. I kept talking and sort of filming little things, got down on the ground and look at mushrooms, and I ignore them. And when you ignore them, they peek out more, and then I would ignore them and then stand up, and run my camera around. So I got a good view of who was around me in the end. And
Hmm.
one guy kept popping up, and he looks funny. He was young then, and he has a mohawk.
Hmm.
And that was how I noticed him from bushes to bushes. I started noticing he followed me the whole way, but he's hiding in the bushes. And then I get to one spot, and I found a stick and a rock next to each other, like fresh, on top of the needles. And then I found an antler and I walked back and I took the antler. I left tobacco, thanked everybody. And I caught him in the bushes not far from me, kneeling down on one knee with his hand on one knee, and he's looking at me.
Hmm.
And by my estimate of the tall of the bushes and his height, he's about 6 footish around in there. And he has a mohawk. His hair is really weird on top. And then a few years ago, I got a picture of him again, and he again is he only goes to the edge of that forest. And I don't know why this is a divider between us, but it is. So he goes to the edge of the forest and he's peeking out at me and got another picture. And he is huge 6 years later. His face is 3 times the size. His mohawk is just a pointy from his forehead back, and it's very short on top. And he looks different than the Bigfoot that I'm used to in the other places.
Hmm.
Like Canadian Bigfoot are different. um, and I call him Mohawk, and I have other pictures of him because he would come out on a limb, and I get in my treehouse on the balcony, and he'll holler over at me. And I've noticed this with him and with the Huckleberry Bigfoot when I was watching them. They do this funny thing where they shake their head side to side and they have their mouth in an O. Like, remember the masks from the First Nations above us, above me?
Hmm.
The Salesian that they have the face and then their mouth is an O. And they have their mouths an O and they shake their heads back and forth and they wave their arm, but no sound can you hear.
Hmm.
And I think they're making a sound to each other that we can't hear.
I believe so too.
Because I've seen them do it up on another mountain in another place when I was watching it. And I can't watch them and film them because the minute I start to take a picture or film them, they stop letting me watch, you know?
Oh, oh my goodness.
Of course. But I've gotten to watch them through my camera lens a lot of times. I've got to see them jump tree to tree. Um, I've Mohawk would do this silly thing where he gets on a branch and he leaves his feet at the tree and he crawls out on his fingers on the limb.
Hmm.
And it could be a very small limb, but yet he's spreading his weight out so it will hold his weight.
Right.
And he's on his fingers and toes. And he'll look at me one way and then they always like tip their head and look at me another way. And then
Hmm.
he'll, kind of cock his head around and then real quick, like his fingers will take him back to his toes and he'll pop around the tree and then peek around the tree again, like, and then
Goodness.
if I try to take a picture during any of that, it's like it ends. So I would rather watch it
Hmm.
and experience it than try to record it for others.
Right. Understood.
And and then he does this the one time he did that and I'm watching through my lens and now I decide that he's gone behind the tree, so I'm gonna take a picture, and what he does is he jumps from that tree over to another tree, and all I can see between the trees is his foot
Mm.
going as and I look at the top of the trees because I could see the top of the trees, and
Mhm.
um, when he landed on the other tree, the tree didn't shake.
Mm.
like, I don't like, "What is that?" You know? That
Mm.
big a thing when he landed on that other tree, no matter what size it was, the tree should have shook, and he didn't.
Oh goodness.
And I got a picture of his foot going through the trees, and, of course, all you see is a black spot, you know? I'm not gonna
Yeah.
share that, it's just a black shot spot, you know?
Mm.
So,
That's
but
incredible.
yeah. If you have your camera out and always going, they won't come up and let you watch them.
Mm.
They're that shy, and any pictures that I got, I literally asked permission for them,
Mhm.
and, I never chased them, I didn't hunt them. I sat down and I drummed, and I called them to me so they could come in their own way, and I think that builds a trust,
Okay, well
and
that's good.
yeah,
That's
and
good.
you have to have respect for their space, like the nest. I wanted to go lay in that one nest by the creek so bad, it felt so wonderful, but in my mind, that's disrespectful, so I didn't go do that. I didn't go lay in that nest and film a YouTube and brag about laying in their nest, you know,
Mhm.
and I think that's how you build trust is allow them some space because we've given them very little space anyways, but allow them some space to feel comfortable, you
Oh
know,
yes, yes, I agree.
and you don't have to feed them except in hard times or maybe, like, you know, put out bones or the entrails of your deer, you know, leave the leftovers, you know, give offerings of your garden every year. Um, you don't have to feed them to bring them in, just, you know, act respectful.
Mm.
And I don't know. I think partly why that I got closer to him is because I didn't pay him any attention at first. I didn't really care what you were doing. I was doing my own thing.
Mhm.
I don't care who else I'm sharing the woods with as long as you're not bothering me, right?
Right,
I
right,
didn't
definitely.
care. I didn't chase them, you know?
And that was smart. That was a smart move. So let me ask you this: how much do you estimate the last Bigfoot you saw? Can you estimate? You know, just guessing how much it may have weighed, or you know, what the or description of it.
I never know how to do weight because you don't get to see the whole body, and you
Mm.
really don't know how to do height because you don't get to see the whole body.
Mm, true.
And and I have, like, a picture of the blob, and I was, like, right up on this guy, and you can tell he's a big old guy, but I really can't tell his size, you know, from the picture, and, yeah, um, I don't know.
Okay,
I
that's
know
not a
they
problem.
have to get at least over 9 foot because of that shaman one where
Mm.
it stood that day. I went out and measured that, and its face was over the 9-foot level, and it was not pulling down the branches. And that one I could feel the thump when it jumped the creek, and then so there were others, like, once I figured out they were back there, I don't know, I'm such a joker. They sleep in the day, and they sleep way up high on these weird platforms. They build I can't explain it. I have pictures of them, but it's like you look at it and you're like, "What is that?" They build weird things in the trees, and they're sleeping up there, and I would find where they were sleeping, and I'd go do my raven call, and I would watch them through my magnifier and my camera, and they'd all sit up and kinda shake their heads and look around, and then I started waking them up in the day, like, "Come play with me," you know, "I wanna mess with you," and "Who are you?" and "What are you doing here?" and, you know, and they never really do, but, they sleep in the day a lot,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and they also are in the trees more than you think. Everybody looks on the ground, and chances are there nobody on the ground in the day, very often, you know, they do some, but not, you know, it's selective, and they're in the trees up here, and we have big trees here. Like, I look at you guys' trees in the east, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're so small." You know, we have big trees there, so that's for saying the Pacific Northwest. They're in the trees a lot, is
Ooh.
my finding,
Okay.
and, um, and they do gather roots, they understand how to use them somehow, even if all they did was chew them. 'Em, you're still
Mm.
getting nutrients. Oh, and one thing the kids did on that same table where the nest and the bird was, I got bit by a brown recluse, and I got really sick from the doctor medicine, and I couldn't plant my gardens, and I used to go sit in my gardens and cry and cry and cry because I
Mm,
had 1,000 plants in my greenhouse, and I couldn't plant them, and I was covered in rashes, and I would cry, and I knew they were watching me, and stuff, and so I think they thought that I thought I was gonna starve, and that was why I was crying, and I would come out, and on that table would be the oddest thing. And the first day, it was it was a tomato with a bite out of it, and it was unripe, not fully big tomato, and it was an ear of corn that had been shucked and small. It wasn't grown yet, and they were sitting on my table, and I thought, "Nobody's gonna do that." I live in the middle of nowhere.
mm,
If my neighbor's gonna come by and leave me something on the table, they're gonna leave, like, a box of asparagus or a box of pears or, they're gonna fill the back end of my car with squash because everybody's got too much. And so I started noticing that, and then they brought the other stuff. They brought Icelandic moss, they brought barks, they brought lichen, they brought moss, they brought all the forest stuff, and I'm an herbalist and stuff. I study those things, and everything that they brought is actually edible, even to us. Like you could survive on that. And so they were trying to show me, oh, here, come forage with us. You have food, right? And so, yeah, and I took pictures of all that and sent my ski gate. And that's something I'll have to bring out one day. I would like to list that out, of the things that they said they eat.
mm. So
And
you, so you had to like kind of So well, let me ask you this: Do you feel that you want to be back in an environment where they're around you
oh,
more
most
often?
definitely,
Okay.
most definitely. I miss them.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to Arizona, I felt lost, and I also felt the loss of the trees.
Hmm.
Those big old trees have so much power.
That's what I heard. The like energy.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
and they're just cutting them down at an unreal rate, and the big old trees like that have so much power and energy and beauty, and they stabilize you, like a walk barefoot in them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I miss all that, but most definitely, I always want to live in a place where the wild things can come visit me because I'm wild too, so
Wild Raven, Wild Lady of the Woods.
yeah, I'm pretty
Yes,
wild.
indeed. Yes, indeed. Do you uh, now with them? The area that got logged out, was that for? Were they doing it so that they could build homes or businesses? Was that why?
They built a subdivision.
Okay.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. I tried to drive up that hill and go look at what they'd done, and I got partway and realized that some of my tree friends are gone, and I literally turned around the road and went back down. I just couldn't go up there and look because it used to be just this beautiful old tamarack, old forest,
Mm-hmm.
cedars, old growth trees that were selectively logged, and they just cut everything down and left a few 6-inch trees.
Yeah, that's terrible. It's so
Yeah,
mistakes.
I couldn't go look. I thought about it, and I keep trying to go there, and I can't bring myself to go look
Mm-hmm.
yet.
Mm-hmm. That's terrible.
Yeah, and what was worst of all was the owners really wanted it to be a park. They wanted because they knew the locals. Locals come get permission to hunt on top. You know, um, they always knew that people would drive up there just to enjoy the day, or to look for herbs, or and they loved that about their land. They loved that part of it would remain a park. And so I know they rolled in their grave when he did that. And it is what it is, but it's a shame when we don't consider what we're doing. You could have put some selective homes in there and left the old growth trees
Mm-hmm. Yes,
if it wasn't for your greed.
that is true.
And it would have been a beautiful home, and it would have been a North Idaho home because you would have had beautiful old growth trees in your yard.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. But they continue to knock down these trees.
No, he wanted that money. He wanted it was all
Yes.
greed. He wanted that dang money,
Mm.
you know? The city boy wanted that money. And
You know how many acres they took over? When
well, I know a homestead is 640 acres, and I don't know how many parcels that this family had because they sold off a bit here to the farmers and they kind of, rearranged things back in the day. But if you ever cut off a piece of a homestead, you either cut off just one piece and then the rest you have to leave, or else you chop it up into blocks, or there's a funny law. So he literally chopped it up into blocks. Some guy came in and bought it all, I guess, and then made the subdivision. But he had already taken his trees out, I think. I'm not sure which one of them logged the trees at the subdivision, but he logged the trees around the homestead. But luckily left some of the big ones around the house and
Okay.
stuff. There's still a few. And then the new owners took out a few more of the old trees to put in their barn.
Oh no.
And I don't know why we do that, but
Mm.
that is our ecosystem. And that was another thing that was explained to me is a ravine. Even in agriculture, they tell you leave the ravines alone because they're the biosphere of the land.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, everything grows in that ravine. All your everything, and so you should never log a ravine, and you should never dam them up, and don't do all that stuff in the ravine areas. Just let nature have a heart space for the land, and your land will be healthier.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's something new. That's actually some good new information for me and everybody else that's listening. So,
Yeah, and they'll tell you that in agriculture too. They realize it on a scientific realm is that you have a lot of your biosphere in those ravines. There's a lot going on in there
mm,
that you want to leave to nature and just leave it be. Don't mess with it.
so true, so true. So, do you grow any of your own food?
I used to, but I don't now. I live in a very weird treehouse. I live in a weird space now, and there's nowhere really for a garden. And but yeah, no, not yet. One day again, I will.
Okay, okay. How did you travel? Were you kind of nomadic, like were you traveling before you where you live? You know, with the Bigfoot, were you traveling or anything like that?
Yes. Um, when my kids got old enough, I got me luggage and I went out to find myself. And that was when I really got thrown on the medicine path and became an apprentice and a helper. I'm a helper.
Mhm.
And they never have to train me much. Like I worked with people from different languages where we didn't understand language, but I can still be your helper because once I see your tools, what you're doing, and start watching the medicine person, what they're doing, I automatically know what they need from their helper. And I automatically know how to hold their energies. I know how to protect them. I know how to follow along. And
Mm,
I can, it's remembering. I'm here to remember who I am and pick up that medicine
okay.
for the people. And that's why the grandmothers always came all the time to help me remember who I am and why I came here this lifetime. And I simply gather up the medicine and hold it in a sacred way, which took a very long time.
Mhm.
Native medicine is so sacred and so powerful. And my first bit of medicine threw me off for years. Like, you have to learn how to do this in a good way.
Right.
And it's not something to mess with. You be careful what you ask for in a Native American way, is all I know.
Hmm.
Because I got cocky and I asked for too much and I got struck by lightning.
Yep.
So it's sacred medicine. And I was told by the grandmothers, simply remember who you are. And they said I was one of the lost children that came back to the people carrying old medicine, which my medicine is the medicine wheel, carrying old medicine in a new way for healing. And they always, I don't know how they do this, but they always recognize you. The grandmothers always recognize you.
Mhm.
Like, they look right at you and they know who you are.
Mhm.
And it would just blow my mind, but they would teach me, and it was like a quickening where I got taken by all these grandmothers. I only ever had one day with them.
Mhm.
We did all ceremony, we did sacred things. They told me the woman's stories. I remembered everything, and it was like I got a quickening, a remembering. And then all of a sudden, all this medicine came to me because I was prepared to hold and I was prepared to assist, you know, the medicine people, because I really just consider myself a helper. I help and I hold medicine, I hold space.
Okay. Okay. Do,
And
do you feel that was now when you did your quickening, was that on a physical plane, or was that like in a spiritual realm? Or
oh, both at
both?
the same
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Because the medicine person will take you in between the worlds and teach you in two realms at one time. And every story is not given lightly. A story to a medicine person is a gift of an energy. And when you hear a story, that's why they had storytellers in the days, because the storyteller was taught not only how to tell the story word by word, but how to give the gift that
Okay.
came with the story, because every story carries a medicine gift.
Mm.
And you open your heart and you receive that gift. When you hear that story, you take it inside and you go sit on yon hill and think about it for a while.
Oh, okay. Now that sounds
And
very like.
I had to do a lot of that. Every time with everybody, they either put me into caves where tight fit, like a birthing cave where you can't move, and then they make it dark
Okay.
and you have to sit in that space, or they put me on yon hill, they make me sit in a rock, go pick a
Mm.
tree, because they give you the gift of that story, and then you gotta go process it, you gotta go think about it, you gotta go absorb it, and you have to accept it and say thank you,
Mm. Okay. Okay. That's
right?
very deep. Yes. Very deep.
Right. Well, that's the old ways that we're losing, and that people are not realizing. When an old story like that is told, it's a medicine gift, and it's a gift to you to take inside for you to use for your personal path.
Mm. That is so
And
deep.
well, those are the ways we'll go back to a lot of that, I think. I think we're gonna circle back around to some better ways here. eh, Not long now, I think.
Mm-mm.
It's either gotta implode, explode, or both at one time, and either way it goes, we rebuild,
Oh,
right?
yes, that is true. Yes,
You know,
very true.
and these old stories, these old ways are tribal, and they were meant to help keep the people healthy, happy, and holy.
Mhm.
And I believe they'll make their rounds again. And all people everywhere have to realize we're here. We have to pick up our power right now, and we have to stand together in a tribal manner. And we're all related. That's why we say that. Pimutakani.
Yes.
We're all related. And we have to stand up as all related and pick up our power and help each other
Mhm.
pick up the pieces. We're all kind of broken. You know,
Yes. Yes.
we got to pick up the pieces, take each other by the hand, and pick up our power and say no more. And this whole thing ends. It could
Mhm.
end in 24 hours if people
Well,
understood our power.
that's true. Pick up
And
the pieces.
yeah, and the native ways, the Aboriginal ways, all the old ways like that of all tribes, every tribe had their own ways, but they were based in solid, just, common tribal courtesy and love and cooperation. And it doesn't matter what you call your God, it's all the same thing. We're all related, we're
Mhm.
all in the same boat.
I hear you. That's right. We are in the same boat.
Yeah, and our race never mattered. And the
That's right.
medicine wheel is beautiful. It contains all the colors of the race. All four
Mhm.
colors are in the medicine wheel, and we sit side by side.
Mhm. That's right. That's right. That's
And no one sits above us. We're just side by side. We're in powwow. We all meet in the middle.
mhm. That is true. That sounds so good. That sounds so good. So,
Yeah.
what do you What do you, well, let me ask you a question since everybody has that kind of opinion. What do you think that the Bigfoot, now I know we talked about them, also being human, but do you think come, they are strictly a human, or do you feel that they have something else within them? Do you believe that they're from another world? Are they from here? Like, how do you feel about them, like, or what they're made up of?
And the old stories from the Salish above me. I never got many stories from Singing Bear about the Bigfoot because I didn't believe and I was in denial. And then he passed on, but he told me a couple of them.
Mhm.
He said that in the old, and I think it's Salish, and I'm not trying to misquote anyone's tribal knowledge, but
Right.
he said in the old days that they were considered like, a big brother and they have their own name, which I don't remember because there's so many, every tribe has their own name, but that they would actually put out the medicine blanket and that the big brothers, the Bigfoot would come and sit with them and trade. They used to trade at the medicine blanket. And so that means to me that they've also heard the drum. They've heard the singing, and that's why when I drum, they all come. They remember that in their subconscious.
Mhm.
That's where we had unity, I think they realize that, in their instincts, they know. And I know when I'm drumming, I can hear them humming, and you can envision them swaying back and forth, and they hum. They understand that there is unity in that drum,
Okay.
and that when we beat the drum, it was for all the people, not just, me or you, but everyone. And I think they remember those days, but I also think that they know better than to interact too much with us.
Mhm.
We're not evolved enough. I don't think we devolved for a while and
Oh
they
yes.
sort of stepped back and went, no, thank you. And he also said that they're interdimensional and that's why the hair stands up on the back of your neck and on your arms. And I have literally seen them travel through portals through the
Mhm.
trees. They travel through the trees.
Okay, I've
And
heard that before. Yeah.
it reminds me of a druid thing that I'd heard somewhere where knock on wood, you knock on the tree and you open the portal. And the druids used to be able to travel through the trees, and they also send messages through the trees. And I can do that to somebody who is awake and aware.
Mhm.
And the moccasin telephone, it's the same thing, but you can knock on a tree and speak your message, and then you'll hear the trees whisper and it'll take it out. And if the person on the other end is there and listening, they'll hear the message. We
Okay.
we're capable of doing this. We just
Right.
forgot.
Right. That's what I heard. We've given a lot
Yeah,
of.
and I'm not special. I just remembered. They had me remember so that when these times come that people like me could say to everyone is remember who you are, remember your power. Stand up and take it back within you and stand proud and tall and open up. Don't let all the dogma and all the propaganda influence you, but just go inside of you
Mhm.
and find that divinity or the Christ light. And it's the crystalline structure of our DNA, which was gifted to us. Remember that. And DNA repairs itself. So, all this damage that we've had done to us, if we would go inside, put our hands and hearts out to each other, we can repair this damage
Mhm.
by our thoughts, our hearts, and our spirits.
Mhm. That is deep. That's true though.
But
Very deep.
that's the only way we have out. If we and everybody knows this within inside themselves in different ways, and it doesn't matter what path you walk, what your religion is, whatever. Inside of you, you know why you're here.
Mhm.
And we're here to pick up our power and say no more to the slavery we've been trapped in.
Mm. This is
And we
deep.
all know that. And some of us want to avoid it. We'd rather play the game or we'd rather, do this and that and avoid it and not listen and whatever and not look inside. But I truly think at these times Mother Earth is birthing a new world. She's having birthing pains right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the women have been birthing this new world through their bodies for at least 25 years because I know about it and other women know about it and we feel it. Every
Mm-hmm.
moon time, we feel we're birthing. If you're tuned in, you feel that inside of us because we're the portal. We feel we are birthing that new world for all of humanity with the Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard. Yeah.
And it's here. It's here. She's in her birthing pains right now. With this change always comes a tilt of the axis, or for the flat earth people, I don't know how you want to explain that, but you'd have to find your own way. But there's always a tilt of the axis whenever the earth changes and there's great change in the land.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hopi tell us that if we would take the one hearted path, we could make that change in the land less on mankind. But that if we choose the two hearted path, which it's obvious that we're in right now,
Mm-hmm.
then there will be a lot of destruction and a lot of shaking because the earth is going to shake, rattle, and roll.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yes,
And
indeed.
we're there. And inside of us all, we've got to come to that center and find our own divinity. We don't have to do everyone else. I don't have to point the finger at you and my neighbor or anybody. I just have to do me. Reach out my hand and heart. We join together and we flip this energy upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And if inside of us we're calm, we're in love, if we're able to say I love you to a stranger, reach out your hand and help and be in that good space, and then that crystalline DNA crystallizes again. It will go back to its original blueprint and it will throw off everything that was done to us by the Anunnaki and the Akrons and whatever, the Dracos, the Greys, they all messed with us. It's all real. Sorry, but it is. And it will throw that off and will become crystalline again. And then our world can recreate itself very fast
Mm-hmm.
because we realize our power and we all want the same things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't matter what your political views are right now. I want good food.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
want good water.
Yes.
I want good air.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I want safety for my children in their schools, in their homes, and in their yard again. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we want community. We want all the same things. And if we would all just realize that in one way, we could literally, everybody on the planet went out at the same time, held hands,
Mm-hmm.
made a bridge around the world of hands and hearts, and just stopped and didn't do anything at all but held hands. This world would change overnight.
Mm, that's deep. I like
Well,
that.
but that's how powerful we are. And that's what, that's, I get, that's the only meaning I can understand of the why, of why we're here. If we're not here to pick back our power up, and take back control of our world, then this is just a fluke of the universe and none of it really makes any sense. Why we all get in one little petri dish and destroy each other and
Mm-hmm.
have wars all the time, and that's the meaning of life?
Yep, that's not bad.
No. Yeah, it's got to be something bigger.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, that's just something. I tell you.
yeah.
Um, do you So are you going to try to stay where you're at now, or will you be moving on after a few years, or on to?
um, Pardon, I don't know what you're asking, but can
Oh,
I ask one small thing?
yes, no problem.
Can you talk for like a minute and a half and let me go to the little girl's room?
No problem. Well,
Okay, thank you.
we'll take a break.
Oh, I know, Lucky, you're gonna sing for the chickens anyway.
Excuse Ravenhawk, everybody. She had to do some business. Right back in 5 minutes.
I would absolutely come in and really look into possibly whether these drugs were him and at his own request. What they recovered, Chris, I understand, was GHB. from the home, and so that's not really consistent with what was in the system. And to that extent, we really need to do an independent pathology and toxicology because I cannot tell you, I have a number of these cases open right now.
It's not a beginner drug, and it's not a sometimes play. And to have the amount in his system that he had, and remember, you're going to have somebody who may be a witness to the prosecution who's going to say, "Yeah, she may have said Michael Jackson stuff because she's a dope, but what I gave her was fentanyl, and that's the only fentanyl that will be in the equation." Now what?
But even if it's so, right? I mean, I think you still need to look and see if it was really a lethal level or just a toxic level. But still, even if it was 5 times the lethal level, there's a missing link here, Chris. There is no nexus that we know of so far between these drugs that she got 6 days prior to his death and then whatever fentanyl went into that Moscow mule that then was ingested by him, even if the toxicology is accurate. So we need more. We need more. And I think this is a very weak case.
Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, everybody. Ravenhawk is back.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes. All right. So do you feel like, from my last question, do you think that you settle in where you're at now in the treehouse, or do you think you'll try to like move on to another place or some place that's habited with Bigfoot or
Oh, I'm a gypsy. I'm sure I'll be moving along here before long.
well, that's exciting though. I think that's always exciting.
I can barely hear you.
How do I sound now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Thank you.
That's strange. I tell you, we've had so many crazy problems this evening with our tech.
Really? I tried to like look at the chat at the same time, but I was hearing an echo of my voice and your voice, and I didn't see the chat at all. So
Mhm.
if
Yes.
anybody asked any questions or anything, I never saw it.
Okay. I can see if anybody has any questions. If you like, I can ask the people you want me to see.
Oh no, I don't care what we do.
Okay.
I just super had to go to the little girl's room. Thank you.
Okay.
I
I
was
hear
waiting and you
that.
kept asking more questions and I was like going, yeehaw,
Mhm.
yeah. So no, this has been really fun. Thank you. I have enjoyed this.
Okay.
This has been casual and just easy and nice and thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just always believe in, just keeping things simple. It's no overthink.
Yeah, I like that.
Definitely, definitely. Do you do coffee, or you're a water drinker, or what do you
All of
like?
the above. I drink wine
Okay.
and why'd you ask me that?
What? What?
Why well, all of a sudden you're getting personal. What the heck is
No,
wrong with you?
no, it's not like it's no. What I just had I said, well, if you what do you like? Because some people drink, like, for example, I can't. I would love to be able to drink coffee, and everybody drinks coffee, but coffee doesn't do anything for me. It just gives me gas and sends me to the bathroom.
Oh, you
And
mean what was I drinking? I was drinking cranberry juice and water, and then I've had a glass of wine tonight to relax and just sit down and talk with a friend. And yeah, no coffee late at night. I drink coffee in the morning, and please do not talk to me before I've had my first cup. Thank you.
oh, I know that's right. I've heard. Yep, a lot of people say that do not talk to them until they've had their first cup of
No.
coffee.
In the mornings, just don't even like look at me funny until I smile. When I smile, day's good, we're good. Just
Hmm.
let me have that little space there. you
Mhm.
know.
Understood. Definitely understood. Okay, well, let's see. I asked everybody. Did anybody have any questions? So I guess everybody's pretty just chill tonight. Because we were mellow and chill ourselves. So I guess they all are mellow and chill there.
Yeah, and
So
I couldn't get the link on my page. I didn't really know how to do it, and we'd already started talking, so I just went with it. And so they'll have to come back and listen later.
okay. So what we'll do? I thank you very much, Ravenhawk. Definitely my new friend, and it was great having you. I'm glad we caught up. It was and it worked pretty fast for us, so that was good too. Like we didn't have to wait a month or two to try to connect to each other, so that was fantastic.
Yeah,
So
no, that was
so
great.
definitely. But what I'll do, I'll make sure that I send the link to you to make it easy for you, and then it'll once you click on the link, it'll open up for you, and you can share it or whatever you want to do with the
Yeah,
connection.
okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so want to thank you for being on tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again. I had a good time. I hope you had a good time. I hope
I had a
everybody
good
else had a
time. Yeah,
great,
and I
great.
was relaxed. I was a little nervous because I'm kind of shy and I don't always just talk about myself,
Mhm.
So yeah, but
Mm,
thank you. I felt really relaxed through the whole thing, and so it's good, huh?
okay, all right. So I will say good night. Be safe and have a good evening. And I will say good night and be safe to everybody else out there. Have a good evening. And thank you, everybody. Make sure you all like and subscribe to the channel, please. And this is uh, Thundercloud for Into the Night, Bigfoot Paranormal Talk Radio. Stay close to your parents, stay close to God, stay close to your friends and family, and be good. Good night.